Welcome, everyone, to the deep dive. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on one of the unsung heroes of our digital age.
Hmm.
What if we told you that the very bedrock of your online banking, your private encrypted messages, even the digital vault holding your cryptocurrency relies not on brute force, but on a kind of mathematical artistry?
Right, like the elegant geometry of curves you might have casually sketched in high school.
Exactly. But, in a way that's far more profound and intricate, creating what are essentially invisible digital fortresses that protect our most sensitive information.
Indeed. It's quite a testament, isn't it, how really abstract mathematics can become such a practical shield.
Yeah.
Today, we're digging deep into elliptic curve cryptography,
Mm.
or ECC. It's truly one of the most critical, yet often unseen, technologies safeguarding, well, nearly every aspect of our digital lives.
That's right. And ECC isn't just another cryptographic tool in the vast digital toolbox. It really represents a foundational shift.
A seismic event, you could say.
Yeah, a seismic event in the world of public key cryptography. It fundamentally changed how we build secure digital connections, especially in a world grappling with, ever-increasing computational power.
And what's truly revolutionary about ECC is its core advantage. It provides equivalent or even superior security to older, more established systems like RSA.
Which we'll get into.
Right, but with significantly, almost astonishingly, smaller key sizes.
And that's the key, isn't it?
That is the key. This isn't just a minor optimization, it's a genuine game changer. It's what allowed robust encryption to spread to contexts where it was previously impractical, maybe even impossible.
Like small devices.
Exactly. Think
Yeah.
about it. This efficiency means ECC is now ideal for everything from the smartphone in your pocket, where every byte and every processing cycle really counts.
Right. Battery life, too.
Battery life, absolutely. All the way to the vast, burgeoning network of Internet of Things devices that are increasingly populating our world, all without bogging them down with heavy computational demands or excessive battery drain.
So, on this deep dive, our mission is to, well, illuminate this fascinating technology for you. You're going to learn about the truly intriguing mathematical underpinnings of ECC, how it manages to twist algebra and geometry into something so incredibly secure.
It's pretty elegant stuff.
It really is. We'll cover the precise yet elegant way it generates those unique public and private keys and performs all those secure operations, and why it's considered so robust against, well, all the classical attacks out there.
Right, the ones we've known about for years.
You'll discover its ubiquitous presence in modern digital life seriously. Once you know what to look for, you'll realize it's absolutely everywhere.
Like that browser padlock.
Exactly. From how your web browser secures your data to the very core of digital currencies. But we won't stop there. We'll also peel back the layers to expose the surprising vulnerabilities.
Ah, yes, the implementation side.
Which often stem from implementation rather than any inherent flaw in the math itself. That's a crucial point.
Absolutely critical.
And finally, we'll confront the impending quantum threat.
The elephant in the room.
The big one, yeah. And explore the exciting and critically important solutions emerging in the field of post-quantum cryptography.
So it's quite a journey.
It is a journey from abstract math to real-world security and a glimpse into our future. Okay, let's unpack this and get started on this fascinating journey. So, before we plunge into the curves themselves, let's quickly set the stage with a refresher on what we mean by public key cryptography.
Good idea. It's the foundation.
It really is. This is the bedrock of nearly all secure communication online, allowing us to encrypt messages and verify identities without ever having to share a secret key beforehand. At its heart, it relies on what's called the asymmetric encryption model.
Precisely. Public key crypto is absolutely fundamental to how we operate securely online today. It runs on a system of mathematically linked key pairs, a public key and a private key.
Right, the asymmetric part.
Exactly. Think of a trapdoor function here. It's a mathematical operation that's easy to perform in one direction.
Like locking a padlock.
Kind of, yeah. But virtually impossible to reverse without a specific secret piece of information that's your private key.
Got it.
So the public key is like a widely distributed open lock. Anyone can use it to encrypt a message for you or to verify a digital signature that you've made.
Okay.
But here's the clever part. Only the corresponding private key, which you keep completely secret, can decrypt that message or generate that signature.
So the security hinges on keeping that private key private.
Entirely. On that trapdoor property, it's incredibly easy one way,
Hmm.
but computationally infeasible, basically impossible for today's computers, to reverse engineer and discover the private key just from knowing the public key, even if you know exactly how the encryption process works.
Got it. And for decades, RSA was essentially the undisputed king of this domain, right?
Oh, absolutely. For a very long time.
Its security was all about the challenge of factoring really, really large numbers into their prime components, like ridiculously large numbers.
That's absolutely correct. RSA's reign was long and very successful, but its fundamental mathematical underpinnings, based on the difficulty of integer factorization, eventually became its primary challenge in many modern contexts.
Why was that? Just computers getting faster?
Pretty much.
Hmm.
As computational power relentlessly increased,
Mm-hmm.
Moore's law and all that,
Right.
the only way to maintain a consistent level of security with RSA was to make its keys increasingly massive. We're talking about needing, say, 30 72-bit RSA keys just to achieve a level of security that a much smaller, like 256-bit ECC key can now match.
Wow, that's a huge difference. 3072 versus 256.
It's enormous, and imagine the practical implications of this scaling. Slower encryption and decryption operations, significantly higher processing power requirements for servers.
Which costs money, takes energy.
Exactly. Increased memory usage for devices, and just larger amounts of data transmitted during every secure handshake.
Which slows everything down, especially on mobile.
Precisely. Slower transactions, higher energy consumption for data centers, and a real bottleneck for mobile or embedded systems. So ECC emerged as the next generation alternative, precisely to address these growing pains. It provides the same robust security level, but with substantially smaller keys, making it far more efficient.
So it wasn't just a minor convenience, it became a necessity.
It really did, especially for an ever more connected, mobile, and frankly, resource-constrained world.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting. This technology feels so cutting edge, almost futuristic sometimes. But who actually invented this elegant solution? It wasn't just dreamed up last year, right?
That's a great question, and it's actually quite remarkable. The idea of using elliptic curves in cryptography was independently proposed by two individuals.
Independently.
Yes, Neil Koblitz, an American mathematician, and Victor Miller, who was at IBM at the time, both in 1985.
1985, wow.
Yeah, same year. They weren't starting from scratch, of course. They
Yeah.
built upon existing mathematical work on elliptic curves that actually dates back centuries, really.
To like Gauss or someone.
Well, significant contributions came from mathematicians like Niels Henrik Abel, Carl Jacobi, and Henri Poincaré in the 19th century. They explored the deep properties of these curves in pure mathematics.
Okay.
Koblitz and Miller, however, were the ones who saw the potential to apply these sophisticated algebraic structures in this novel cryptographic context. They essentially created a new paradigm for public key encryption.
That's incredible. Two people, same revolutionary idea, same year. So how quickly did the cryptographic world catch on and adopt this? These things usually take time.
They do, but its adoption was remarkably swift in cryptographic terms. ECC began gaining widespread traction around, say, 2004, 2005.
Okay, so about 20 years later. Still feels fast for crypto standards.
It is, and a lot of that was thanks to the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, in the U.S.
Right, the standards body.
They played a pivotal role by issuing recommendations for a set of 15 specific elliptic curves for government use as early as 1999. That really set a global benchmark.
And when the government adopts something...
Exactly. The NSA, always a key player in cryptographic standards, even endorsed ECC by including it in its Suite B of recommended algorithms.
Suite B, right, that was for classified stuff.
Both classified and unclassified national security systems. This high-level endorsement significantly accelerated its integration into commercial products and protocols. You started seeing it everywhere.
Now, you mentioned NIST. Wasn't there some controversy later on related to NIST and ECC?
Ah, yes. It's important to acknowledge that. While NIST's role was crucial for standardization, it hasn't been without, let's say, scrutiny.
The Snowden stuff.
Precisely. The revelations by Edward Snowden in 2013 regarding the dually ZRBG pseudorandom number generator.
Which used ECC.
Which used ECC, yes. It stirred significant concern. It was alleged that the NSA had influenced NIST to include specific parameters in dually ZRBG that could potentially contain a backdoor.
A backdoor, meaning the NSA could break the encryption.
Potentially, yes. Making it easier for them, allegedly, to decrypt communications that relied on that specific random number generator. This incident, understandably, profoundly impacted trust in state-influenced cryptographic standards.
I bet.
And it really underscored the critical need for absolute transparency and independent vetting of all cryptographic parameters and algorithms.
So it wasn't a flaw in ECC math itself, but in one specific, possibly compromised implementation.
Exactly. That's a crucial distinction. Despite that controversy over a specific standard, the overall push toward ECC continued, driven overwhelmingly by its inherent mathematical advantages and, critically, its efficiency.
All right, so now that we know why ECC became so important and its backstory, let's brace ourselves for the how. This is where it gets a bit mathy.
A little bit, but hopefully intuitively.
Okay. When we talk about elliptic curves in this cryptographic context, we need to completely redefine what that word curve means, right? This isn't just your average smooth oval from a graphing calculator.
Absolutely not. And that's a crucial distinction, often where people get a little tripped up initially. In cryptography, an elliptic curve isn't a continuous flowing graph like you might remember from algebra.
No smooth lines.
No. Instead, it's defined as a specific set of discrete points that satisfy a particular algebraic equation. And critically, these points are defined over what we call a finite field.
Okay, finite field. That sounds advanced, straight out of abstract algebra. How can we make sense of that?
It sounds complex, but let's make it approachable. The standard form for an elliptic curve used in cryptography is often called the Weierstrass equation.
Yeah.
Y2 equals by 3 plus x plus b mod p.
Y squared equals x cubed plus x plus b mod p. Okay.
But here, a and b are just constants specific to the curve, defining its shape, if you will. The p is a very large prime number.
Huge, right.
Very large, hundreds of bits long. And the mod p part is what defines our finite field.
Modulo p, like clock arithmetic.
Exactly like clock arithmetic. Imagine a clock face, but instead of just 12 numbers, it has p numbers, from 0 up to p1. Any operation, addition, multiplication, whatever wraps around p. So if you get a result larger than p1, you simply take the remainder when divided by p.
So all the coordinates, the x and y, stay within that range, 0 to p1.
Precisely. All the x and y coordinates on our cryptographic curve are integers that effectively wrap around this massive prime number p. This process transforms a potentially infinite continuous curve into a discrete finite set of points, like scattered beads on that enormous clock face.
And that's important for computers, because they like finite things.
Absolutely essential. Computers work with finite countable numbers. This finite, discrete nature is what makes it cryptographically useful.
Okay.
Now, within this finite set of points, we also introduce a special kind of conceptual point called the point at infinity, often denoted by O.
The letter O, or 0.
Usually the letter O. This isn't a physical point you can graph. It's more of an abstract but mathematically necessary concept. It acts as the identity element in our group.
Like 0 in normal addition. 5 plus 0 is 5.
Yeah. Exactly like that. P plus O, EP. It ensures that our mathematical operations always have a valid result and that the group properties hold. Think of it as the landing spot for lines that would otherwise go off to infinity in the continuous version.
Got it. Abstract but necessary.
Necessary for the math to work cleanly. So, for instance, a widely used curve like NIST P256 has specific publicly defined parameters for P, A, and B.
Everyone knows these numbers.
Yes, they're public standards. And within this carefully chosen finite set of points on that specific curve, a particular point G, called the generator point or base point, is also chosen and made public.
G for generator.
Right. This G is crucial because it has a very large prime order. Let's call it n.
Order n, meaning?
Meaning that if you add G to itself n times, using our special curve addition rules, you get back to that point at infinity, O. And n is also a very large prime number. Yeah. This G is the publicly known starting point for all our cryptographic operations on that specific curve.
Okay, so we have these discrete points on a kind of mathematical clock face defined by P, A, and B. We have a starting point G. But how do you add points on this curve? You said it's not like normal addition.
Definitely not. 2 plus 2 does not equal 4 here.
Right. This feels like a whole new kind of arithmetic.
It is indeed a unique kind of arithmetic, but one that's actually quite geometrically intuitive, surprisingly. The points on an elliptic curve, along with this unique point addition operation, form what mathematicians call an abelian group.
An abelian group meaning the order of addition doesn't matter, right? P plus Q is the same as Q plus P.
Exactly. Commutative. It behaves predictably and consistently, which is absolutely essential for building reliable cryptography. Let's think about the geometric intuition first, maybe without getting bogged down in the specific formulas just yet.
Okay, geometry I can maybe visualize.
For point addition of two distinct points, say P and Q, on our curve, Imagine drawing a straight line through these 2 points, P and Q.
Okay, got the line.
Because of the special properties of elliptic curves, this line will always intersect the curve at exactly one other point. Let's call that third point R.
Always.
Always over the finite field, with a slight caveat for vertical lines, which is where the point at infinity comes in. The result of P plus Q is then defined as the negation of R.
Negation, meaning?
Geometrically, it just means reflecting R across the x-axis to get your final sum, P plus Q. If R has coordinates x, y, its negation has coordinates x, y, remembering that y is calculated modulo P.
Okay, draw a line, find the third point, flip it over the x-axis.
That's the intuition. Algebraically, of course, computers don't draw lines. There are precise formulas involving the coordinates of P and Q and the curve parameters A and P that allow us to calculate the coordinates of this new reflected point, P plus Q, all using modulo P arithmetic. It's exact and consistent for computer operations.
That's quite elegant. So what happens if you want to add a point to itself, like P plus P? How do you draw a line through just one point?
That's a great intuitive follow-up. That operation is called point doubling, or 2P. Geometrically, instead of drawing a line through 2 distinct points, you draw the tangent line to the curve at the point P.
The line that just kisses the curve at P.
Exactly. This tangent line, again due to the curve's properties, will intersect the curve at one other point. And just like before, you reflect that intersection point across the x-axis to get the result, 2P.
Same reflection trick?
Same reflection trick. And just like with point addition, there are specific algebraic formulas involving the coordinates of P and the curve parameters, ATP, that define the slope of this tangent and calculate the coordinates of 2P, all modulo P.
Incredible. So this repeated point addition then, adding P to itself over and over, that must be what you call scalar multiplication. And that's the real powerhouse operation.
Precisely. Scalar multiplication, often denoted as QKP, is simply P added to itself K times. For example, 4P would be P plus P plus P plus P.
Which you wouldn't calculate one step at a time, presumably.
No, definitely not if K is huge. A computer calculates this efficiently, using a combination of point doublings and point additions, often called the double and add algorithm, based on the binary representation of K.
Okay, more efficient.
Much more efficient.
Yeah.
And this operation, scalar multiplication, is the absolute cornerstone of ECC security. It's computationally quite efficient in one direction. It's relatively easy to compute Q, key equal KP, if you know K and P.
Right.
But, and this is the crucial part, the really crucial part, it is extraordinarily difficult, computationally infeasible, to reverse engineer and find the scalar K if you're only given the resulting point Q and the starting point P.
That's the trapdoor again. Easy to multiply, impossible to divide in this context.
Exactly. This profound one-way property is what makes ECC so powerful and secure.
So from these complex-looking curve operations and this one-way scalar multiplication, how do we actually get our public and private keys that protect all our data? That's where the rubber meets the road, right?
Absolutely. And the key generation process is actually surprisingly simple and rapid once the specific curve parameters, A, B, P, G, A, on, have been publicly agreed upon and standardized.
So everyone uses the same curve parameters, like for P256?
Yes, for interoperability. Different systems need to agree on the curve, so it's a two-step process. First, you generate a private key, usually called D. This is just a random integer. A random integer chosen within a specific range, usually 1 equals dn, where n is the order of the generator point G we mentioned earlier.
Okay.
The absolute criticality here, and we'll come back to this, is that D must be truly random and kept absolutely secret. Any predictability, any weakness in the randomness,
Game over.
completely game over. Any compromise of this private key D breaks the entire cryptographic system for you.
Right. So that's step 1. Secret random number D. What's step 2?
Step 2 is computing the corresponding public key, usually called Q. This is done by performing a single scalar multiplication using your private key D and the public base point G. Q equals DG.
So Q is the result of adding G to itself D times.
Precisely. Your private key D is a secret number, and your public key Q is a point on the elliptic curve derived from multiplying your secret number D by the public base point G.
And because scalar multiplication is easy one way but hard to reverse.
Exactly. The security, again, lies in the fact that while it's easy for you to compute Q from your D and the public G, it's practically impossible for anyone else to figure out your secret D just by looking at your public key Q and the public base point g.
Because that would require solving.
That would require solving the elliptic curve discrete logarithm problem, which, as far as we know with classical computers, is computationally infeasible.
Okay, this sounds like the secret sauce, the magic ingredient that makes ECC so incredibly secure. This elliptic curve discrete logarithm problem, or ECDLP, how exactly does its hardness translate into a digital fortress?
Indeed, the ECDLP is the bedrock, the impenetrable foundation of ECC security. Formally, it states that given a base point p on an elliptic curve, like our public G, and another point q on the same curve, where q is known to be the result of scalar multiplication of p by some secret integer k, so q equals kp.
Where k is our private key d.
Exactly. It is computationally infeasible to find that scalar k or d. In simpler terms, if I give you the public's starting point g and someone's public key q, which is just dg, figuring out their private key d is, for all practical purposes, impossible for even the most powerful supercomputers today.
So it's like RSA, where the security relies on the difficulty of factoring huge numbers, but for curves. What's the critical difference in that hardness? Is one harder than the other?
That's a great analogy, but with a critical distinction in the nature and degree of that hardness, RSA security relies on the difficulty of factoring large integers into their prime components.
Right.
For this, the best-known classical algorithms, such as the number field sieve, are considered sub-exponential. While they get harder as numbers grow, the growth in difficulty isn't as explosive as we'd like for long-term security against improving computers.
Okay, sub-exponential. What about ECDLP?
Now, for the ECDLP, the best-known classical algorithms, like Pollard's row algorithm, are exponential. This is a crucial difference in computational complexity.
Exponential is much harder than sub-exponential, right?
Much, much harder. It gives ECC its enormous strength per bit advantage.
Can you illustrate that difference? Exponential versus sub-exponential?
Oh, sure. Imagine you're trying to find a secret number, k. If it's a sub-exponential problem, the number of steps or tries you need might grow something like, say, 2 to the power of the cube root of the number of bits in k. It grows, but not super fast.
Okay.
But for an exponential problem like ECDLP, the number of steps grows more like 2 to the power of half the number of bits in k. That difference in the exponent cube root versus a linear fraction is staggering as the numbers get large.
So the effort explodes much faster for ECDLP.
Exactly. What this means in practice is that the computational effort required to break an ECC key grows exponentially with the key size, offering a vastly higher strength per bit ratio compared to RSA. It's widely believed to be a much, much harder problem to solve than integer factorization, especially when you compare keys that offer the same level of security.
And what does this exponential hardness buy us in practical terms? It must have some real-world advantages beyond just theoretical difficulty, right?
It absolutely does, and these are where ECC truly shines in practice. The superior hardness of the ECDLP translates directly into a significant efficiency advantage. The most prominent benefit, as we touched on, is substantially smaller key sizes.
Give me those numbers again. They were pretty stark.
Yeah, they really are. For example, a 256-bit ECC key offers approximately 128 bits of security. That's a common target level today.
Okay, 128 bits of security, like a strong AES key.
Roughly equivalent, yes. Now, to achieve the same 128 bits of security with RSA, you would need a massive 3072-bit RSA key.
Wow, 256 bits versus 3072. That's more than 10 times larger.
It is, and it gets even more dramatic. If you need 256 bits of security, which is recommended for protecting data long-term.
Like top secret stuff or things needing protection for decades.
Exactly. You'd look at maybe a 512-bit ECC key, the equivalent RSA key. It's estimated to be a staggering 15,360 bits.
15,000 bits. That's enormous.
It's huge. This difference is not just large, it's drastic. It makes a tangible impact on system performance, storage, and bandwidth.
So how does that massive size difference translate into real-world performance beyond just storage?
Well, it allows for greater efficiency in operations across the board. Scalar multiplication, the core ECC operation, is generally faster than RSA's core operation, which is modular exponentiation, especially when comparing operations that provide equivalent security levels.
So faster calculations too.
Generally, yes, for signing operations especially. Furthermore, the elliptic curves used in cryptography aren't just picked arbitrarily out of a hat.
They're special curves.
They are meticulously chosen and undergo extensive mathematical scrutiny to resist known mathematical attacks. There are specific attacks like the MOV, Menzies Okamoto-Vanstone attack, or issues with using so-called anomalous curves. Good standard curves are designed to avoid these pitfalls.
Like the NIST curves or curve 25519.
Exactly. This careful selection ensures their inherent mathematical strength against specific analytical methods. NIST, for instance, has published tables explicitly illustrating this key strength equivalence, really underscoring how ECC maintains robust security without the linear burden of ever larger keys that RSA faces.
So, smaller keys mean tangible, real-world advantages. What are those concrete benefits for you, the listener, and for organizations trying to secure their digital infrastructure?
The practical benefits are substantial, especially in our interconnected and increasingly mobile world. Firstly, as mentioned, you often get significantly faster key generation and digital signature signing.
So setting up connections or verifying things is quicker.
Right. This speeds up many cryptographic processes. Secondly, those diminutive key sizes translate directly into reduced data transmitted during things like TLS, SSL handshakes. That's the setup for HTTPS.
Less data flying back and forth.
Exactly. This conserves bandwidth, which is absolutely crucial for mobile devices where data plans might be limited, for high-traffic websites that need to serve millions of users efficiently.
Every millisecond counts for user experience.
It really does. And for any environment where data transfer is a premium, think about how many secure websites you visit daily. Every bit saved on the handshake adds up globally.
Makes sense. What else?
Thirdly, ECC generally requires lower CPU and memory usage compared to RSA for equivalent security.
Ah, the resource-constrained devices again.
Precisely. This makes it an ideal solution for tiny IoT sensors in a smart home, for smart cards, or even older mobile phones. It allows them to participate in secure communications without being bogged down, which can extend battery life and reduce hardware costs.
Okay, sounds like a clear winner. Are there any downsides or trade-offs? Nothing's perfect, right?
Right, it's important to acknowledge that there are some trade-offs. Nothing is a perfect silver bullet. While generally efficient, ECC does present a somewhat steeper learning curve for developers to implement securely compared to RSA.
Harder to code correctly?
Potentially, yes. RSA's math is often considered more straightforward. The intricacies of finite field arithmetic, the group law, and especially protecting against side-channel attacks require very careful coding to avoid the implementation pitfalls we'll discuss later.
Okay.
And while ECC signing is often faster, some analyses suggest that ECC signature verification can, in certain specific hardware contexts or for certain workloads, actually be a bit slower than RSA verification.
Why is that?
Often it's due to highly optimized hardware instructions for RSA's modular arithmetic that have been developed and refined over decades. ECC optimization is catching up, but RSA has a head start in some hardware.
Interesting nuance.
It is. But when you look at the comprehensive feature comparison key length, CPU usage, memory usage, network usage, overall efficiency, anti-attack capability for equivalent security, ECC generally excels. RSA might have broader historical compatibility just due to its longer tenure, but ECC truly represents the high-efficiency, high-security pathway forward for most modern applications, especially where resources are constrained.
It's fascinating to see how that mathematical elegance and that efficiency translate into such widespread practical advantages. You mentioned the browser padlock. Every time you see that little lock icon, ECC is probably working incredibly hard behind the scenes.
Very likely, yes.
Yeah.
ECC plays an absolutely vital role in securing the modern web. It's extensively used in TLS 1.2 and especially TLS 1.3, the protocols that underpin HTTPS, ensuring your browsing is private and secure.
How is it used in TLS?
Primarily in two ways. For key exchange, establishing the shared secret key for the session. This is done mainly through ECDH, Elliptic Curve Diffie-Hellman, or its ephemeral variant, ECDHE.
Ephemeral meaning temporary, just for that session.
Exactly. And also for digital signatures via ECDSA, Elliptic Curve Digital Signature Algorithm, which is used to authenticate the server, proving it owns the certificate it presents.
Okay.
So for example, when you visit a site like google.com or your bank, your browser and the server will likely negotiate an ECDHE key exchange using an elliptic curve, perhaps like P256 or P384.
Right.
This process establishes a unique, temporary shared secret key just for that specific session. This ephemeral key exchange provides what's called perfect forward secrecy, PFS.
PFS. That sounds important. What is it?
It's incredibly important for privacy. It means that even if a server's long-term private key, the one tied to its certificate, is somehow compromised in the future.
Like stolen or leaked.
Right.
Yeah.
Even if that happens, your past communication sessions with that server remain secure. Because the session keys used for those past sessions were derived using ephemeral keys, they were never explicitly transmitted or stored long-term, and they can't be recalculated just from the server's compromised long-term key.
That's a huge security benefit.
Massive. And companies like Cloudflare, a major CDN, have reported that using ECC significantly reduces TLS handshake times, sometimes by hundreds of milliseconds compared to RSA.
Which means websites load faster.
Exactly, leading to noticeable improvements in performance and responsiveness, especially critical for mobile users connecting over maybe slower networks. It directly impacts your daily experience online, making things faster and safer.
Okay, web browsing is huge. You also mentioned cryptocurrencies earlier. You said no Bitcoin without ECC. How fundamental is it there?
It's absolutely fundamental. Cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin are intrinsically linked to ECC, specifically using a particular curve known as SecP256K1.
SecP 256K1. Why that specific one?
It has some properties that were considered advantageous at the time Bitcoin was designed, including being slightly faster for certain operations and allowing for public key recovery from signatures, which can save bandwidth.
Okay, so how is it used?
It's used for generating wallet addresses and, critically, for signing transactions. A Bitcoin address, for instance, isn't your public key directly, but is derived from a hash of your ECC public key.
Right.
When you want to send Bitcoin or another cryptocurrency, you use your private key to create an ECDSA signature for that transaction message. This signature serves multiple vital functions in that decentralized world.
Like proving it was really you.
Exactly. It guarantees authenticity, proving that you, and only you, the rightful holder of the private key associated with those coins, authorized that specific transfer. It also ensures non-repudiation.
Meaning you can't deny sending it later?
Correct. You cannot later deny having sent the transaction because only your private key could have generated that valid signature. This mechanism is crucial for preventing issues like double spending in a trustless, decentralized system.
Where there's no central bank or authority.
Precisely. There's no central authority to verify transactions, so the cryptography has to do the heavy lifting. And, as I mentioned, the ability to recover the public key from just the signature, which SecP256K1 allows, is beneficial in blockchain contexts for saving bandwidth, as you don't always need to broadcast the full public key with every transaction. Saves space on the blockchain.
It really is everywhere then, from your online banking to your crypto wallet to your pocket, from your smartphone to your smart home. ECC seems to be powering a lot of devices.
Absolutely. Its combination of strong security with small key sizes and faster operations makes it an ideal fit for resource-limited devices. It enables strong security without a heavy performance penalty.
Like what kind of devices?
Everything from enabling secure boot processes and authenticated firmware updates on tiny IoT devices, your smart thermostat, your connected light bulbs, your security camera.
Things that don't have a lot of processing power.
Exactly. All the way to providing robust end-to-end encryption on mobile messaging platforms. For example, Apple's iMessage utilizes ECC for its strong end-to-end encryption, ensuring privacy between users.
And other messaging apps.
Yes, the Signal protocol, which is a cornerstone of secure messaging and is integrated into popular apps like WhatsApp, Google Messages, and Facebook Messenger, also heavily relies on ECDH for secure key agreement. This ensures that only the sender and intended recipient can read messages, regardless of what the service provider itself can see.
So end-to-end encryption relies heavily on ECC, and it extends to the digital identities we rely on every day, too, right? Like the certificates that prove a website is who it says it is.
Absolutely. In the realm of digital certificates and public key infrastructure, PKI, those authorities that issue the certificates.
Certification authorities, CAs.
Right. CAs like DigiCert, GlobalSign, Let's Encrypt. They increasingly issue SSL/TLS certificates that use ECC keys and ECC signatures.
Why? Same reasons.
Same reasons. These ECC certificates are smaller and faster to process compared to their RSA equivalents. This means less overhead for establishing secure connections, which is particularly beneficial for things like VPNs, where every byte and millisecond can impact performance and latency. It just allows for more scalable and efficient secure communication across the board.
Okay. What other key applications should we be aware of that might surprise us? Where else is ECC hiding?
Well, you also find ECC deeply embedded in SSH, Secure Shell.
For logging into servers remotely.
Exactly. OpenSSH, the standard implementation, supports ECC keys, like ED25519 keys, for faster and more efficient host authentication and user logins compared to older RSA keys.
Makes sense.
It's also a fundamental component of many blockchain and smart contract platforms beyond just Bitcoin. Ethereum, for example, uses ECC extensively for account management and transaction signing. And more specialized cryptocurrencies like Zcash employ ECC primitives within their sophisticated zero-knowledge proofs, enabling privacy-preserving transactions where the details are hidden. The real-world benefits are clear and profound. ECC can be significantly faster, sometimes cited as up to 10 times faster, than equivalent security RSA on embedded systems. And it offers much better scalability for high-traffic servers, allowing them to support more concurrent secure connections with less strain on infrastructure. Its efficiency truly makes it the workhorse of modern, ubiquitous encryption.
Okay, we've just spent a lot of time highlighting the mathematical strength of ECC, its elegance, its efficiency, and its widespread utility. It sounds almost perfect, but if the underlying math is so strong, where are the weaknesses? Surely nothing in cryptography is truly impenetrable or without its Achilles heel.
That's a critical and astute question,
Yeah.
because you're right, nothing is perfect. The fascinating and frankly somewhat unsettling truth is that the primary vulnerabilities we see with ECC in the real world are not usually theoretical weaknesses in its underlying mathematics.
The math itself holds up.
Generally, yes. Assuming properly chosen standard curves and large enough keys, the ECDLP is still considered very hard classically. Instead, the vast majority of successful exploits stem from poor implementation.
How the code is written.
Exactly. How the algorithms are coded, how they're deployed, how they handle inputs, how randomness is generated, basically how they're used in real-world systems. This human factor, the implementation detail, is where the cracks in the curve truly emerge, turning a mathematically sound system into a potentially fragile one.
Okay, so what are some examples of these implementation flaws?
Well, let's start with side-channel attacks. These are particularly insidious because they don't try to break the math directly by finding some clever shortcut.
What do they do instead?
Instead, an attacker exploits subtle physical characteristics of a computing device while it's performing cryptographic operations. This could be minute variations in the exact timing of operations, or tiny fluctuations in power consumption, or even electromagnetic leaks coming from the device.
Leaking secrets physically.
Essentially, yes. The mechanism is quite clever. Remember how scalar multiplication, KP, involves point doublings and point additions based on the bits of the secret key K?
Right, the double AND method.
Well, the internal steps for processing a 0 bit in the private key, which might just be a point doubling, are computationally distinct from those for processing a 1 bit, which might be a point doubling followed by a point addition.
Different operations take slightly different amounts of time or power.
Precisely. These distinct operations can lead to very slight but potentially measurable differences in execution time or power signatures. An attacker carefully observing these minute differences, maybe over many operations.
Could figure out the sequence of zeros and ones.
Exactly. They could potentially reconstruct the private key bit by bit. Think of cache timing attacks, where an attacker monitors memory access patterns or literally observing the power usage on a smart card with an oscilloscope. These can reveal secrets without ever touching the encrypted data directly.
Wow. How do you defend against that?
The mitigation is critical. Use constant time algorithms. Implementations must be written in a way that the sequence of operations, the timing, the memory access patterns are identical, regardless of whether a secret bit is a 0 or a 1. Algorithms like the Montgomery ladder are specifically engineered for this, ensuring uniform execution and masking these telltale physical clues.
That sounds incredibly hard to get right in code.
It is notoriously difficult, yes, a major source of vulnerabilities.
Okay, that's incredibly clever and terrifying. So, if the implementation isn't perfectly uniform, you're essentially leaking secrets. What about attacking the curve itself? Maybe not breaking the math, but exploiting errors in how it's handled.
That brings us to invalid curve attacks. Here, an attacker tries to trick a vulnerable ECC implementation into performing cryptographic operations on a point that does not actually belong to the designated secure elliptic curve.
Like feeding it bad data.
Exactly. Or maybe forcing it to operate on a point that lies on a completely different, much weaker curve that the attacker chose.
And if the system doesn't check,
if the implementation fails to strictly validate all incoming curve parameters and points, essentially trusting external input blindly, this can lead to severe consequences. Attackers can sometimes leverage this to perform small subgroup attacks, where the bad point has a small order, allowing them to leak bits of the private key incrementally. Or in some cases, it can even allow for full extraction of the private key.
yikes.
Related to this are twist attacks. An elliptic curve often has a related twist curve, which might have different, often weaker, security properties. If an attacker can trick the system into operating on a point that's on the twist instead of the main curve, it can again enable these kinds of invalid curve or small subgroup attacks.
So the lesson is validate your inputs.
Absolutely. Strict input validation is paramount. Never trust input points or parameters received from potentially untrusted sources without rigorously verifying they are indeed on the correct, strong curve and satisfy all the necessary mathematical properties.
Makes sense. What about the curves themselves? Can you just pick a bad curve?
Yes, and that's the broader issue of weak curve selection. Historically, there have been concerns raised about certain curves, maybe curves with small discriminants, or those derived from allegedly magic numbers where the origin isn't clear.
Like why these specific numbers A and B?
Exactly. Or parameters that aren't verifiably random. A critical example here, which we touched on earlier regarding the controversy, involved the dual ECDRBG standard.
The random number generator with the alleged backdoor.
Right. This was a pseudorandom number generator standard using ECC points, published by NIST. After the Snowden revelations, it was widely alleged that the NSA had influenced NIST to include specific, non-random starting points, P and Q, within the standard.
And these points created the backdoor.
The allegation was that these points were generated in such a way that if you knew a secret mathematical relationship between them, which the NSA presumably did, but no one else did, you could predict the output of the random number generator after observing just one block of its output.
Which means you could break the encryption that used those random numbers.
Precisely. If it was used to generate keys or nonces, they wouldn't be secret anymore to someone with a backdoor key. This incident, whether the backdoor was intentional or not, massively underscored the critical need for using publicly vetted, transparently designed curves.
Like ED 25599.
Exactly. Curves like ED 25599, designed by Daniel J. Bernstein, or those promoted by initiatives like Safe Curves, prioritize rigorous, open, and verifiable design processes, often starting from simple, non-arbitrary numbers to avoid any suspicion of hidden weaknesses or backdoors. Transparency is key.
Okay, that's a lot about subtle implementation flaws, input validation, and curve selection. But there's one specific implementation error that sounds utterly devastating just from its name. Nonce reuse. This feels like a textbook example of how a seemingly small mistake can bring down the entire system, right?
You are absolutely correct. The nonce problem, specifically in the ECDSA signature scheme, is one of the most critical and potentially catastrophic vulnerabilities, and it's purely an implementation failure, usually a programming error.
What is a nonce again in this context?
A nonce, usually called K, is a random number that is generated and used internally, just once, as a temporary ephemeral secret during the creation of an ECDSA signature.
So it's different for every signature.
It must be different for every single signature. The entire security of the signing process depends on one inviolable rule. This nonce K must be unique and unpredictable for every single signature generated with the same private key D.
Even if it's random, if you accidentally use the same random number twice.
You're in massive trouble. The consequence is devastating, and importantly, it's a non-probabilistic vulnerability. This isn't about guessing or needing lots of data. It's about mathematical certainty.
Certainty of what?
If the exact same nonce K is used to sign two different messages, M1 and M2, using the same private key D, then anyone who sees those two signatures can mathematically compute your private PD with absolute certainty.
Just from the two signatures and the messages. Wow.
Okay, let's try a simplified conceptual explanation without getting lost in the full equations. The ECDSA signature, RS, is calculated using formulas that involve the private key D, the message hash Z, and the secret nonce K. Specifically, the S component looks roughly like S K so 1 th ard mod N, where N is the curve order.
Okay, K, D, and Z are all mixed up in there.
Right. Now, imagine the attacker gets two signatures, R1S1 for message M1 with hash Z1, and R2S2 for message M2 with hash Z2, if they know or suspect that the same K was used for both.
Which means K1 equals K2.
Exactly. And the R part of the signature actually depends only on K and the base point G, so if K is reused, R will also be the same. R11 use R2. The attacker now has two equations involving S1, Z1, R, D, and K, and S2, Z2, R, D, and K. They know S1, S2, Z1, Z2, and R. The only unknowns are K and D.
Two equations, two unknowns. Solvable.
Yes. With some simple algebra, they can manipulate these two equations to essentially cancel out the K term. Since K is the only thing linking the two other than D, getting rid of K allows the attacker to directly solve for D, the private key.
Algebra reveals the private key. That's brutal.
It is. This is not a probabilistic guess. It's a direct mathematical extraction. The problem wasn't necessarily that the nonce K wasn't random enough initially, but simply that it was reused.
So how do you prevent this catastrophic failure?
The mitigation is straightforward in principle, but absolutely critical in practice. Always use a cryptographically secure random number generator, CSPRNG, to ensure K is unique and unpredictable for every single signature. Or, even better sometimes, employ the deterministic nonce generation methods like the one specified in RFC 6979.
Deterministic. How does that work?
RFC 6979 defines a way to derive the nonce K in a deterministic but cryptographically secure way, directly from the private key D in the message hash Z. Since the message hash Z will be different for different messages, the resulting K will also be different, but it's generated predictably from D and Z. This completely avoids the need for a separate source of randomness during signing, eliminating the risk of nonce reuse due to a faulty RNG. Many modern libraries now use this approach.
That sounds much safer. Avoids the whole randomness problem.
It does. It trades reliance on a perfect RNG for reliance on a good hash function and the secrecy of the private key itself.
That's chilling how a simple error like reusing GA can unravel everything. Let's look at some real-world examples that highlight these devastating vulnerabilities. Where has this or other ECC implementation flaws gone wrong in practice?
Unfortunately, there are several very well-known and impactful incidents that serve as cautionary tales. One of the most famous, almost legendary now, is the Sony PlayStation 3 hack back in 2010.
Yes, the PS3 saga. That was ECC.
It involved ECDSA, yes. Sony's implementation for signing game updates and firmware failed to use a unique random nonce K for each signature. They apparently used the same nonce for many different signatures.
Oh dear, the exact mistake we just talked about.
The exact mistake. This critical nonce reuse allowed hackers to apply the algebraic attack we discussed and compute the master signing key for the entire console.
The keys to the kingdom.
Pretty much. With this key, they could sign arbitrary code, enabling widespread piracy, homebrew software, and unauthorized modifications. It was a catastrophic failure rooted entirely in a bad implementation of ECDSA, not a flaw in ECDSA itself.
Okay, that's a big one. What else?
In a similar vein, though perhaps less dramatic, Android Bitcoin wallet exploits occurred around 2013. Flaws were discovered in Android's default Java-secure random number generator on some older versions.
The random number generator wasn't random enough.
It sometimes produced colliding outputs, which meant that different Bitcoin wallets running on affected phones could end up generating the same nonce K when signing transactions.
Which allowed attackers
To recover the private keys from those vulnerable wallets using the nonce reuse attack, leading to stolen Bitcoin. Again, a stark reminder of the criticality of high-quality, cryptographically secure randomness.
Okay, so nonce reuse is clearly a recurring nightmare. What about other types of implementation flaws?
A more recent and very widespread issue was CVE 2020-0601, which got the nickname Curveball.
Curveball. Sounds ominous.
It was a critical vulnerability in Microsoft's Windows Crypto API, the core cryptographic library used by Windows. It affected how Windows validated ECC certificates.
What was the flaw?
Essentially, it failed to properly check or enforce the curve parameters specified within an ECC certificate. It exploited unchecked curve parameters, precisely the invalid curve attack vector we discussed earlier.
So an attacker could supply a certificate using fake curve parameters.
Exactly. An attacker could craft a malicious certificate that claimed to use standard ECC parameters, but actually used different ones they controlled, and the vulnerable Windows Crypto API wouldn't notice the mismatch. They could then use this forged certificate to impersonate legitimate websites or sign malicious software, and Windows would trust it.
Making phishing attacks or malware seem legitimate.
Precisely. It could be used for sophisticated man-in-the-middle attacks or to bypass code signing protections that rely on trusted certificates. It affected billions of devices and required an urgent widespread patch from Microsoft in January 2020.
That's huge. Any others?
We also saw the Minerva attack in 2019. Researchers discovered weak keys being generated in certain ECC implementations, particularly in hardware like smart cards.
Weak keys again? How?
It was again related to faulty random number generators during the key generation process itself, leading to private keys that weren't fully random and could sometimes be guessed or recovered using side-channel information. This flaw allowed for the recovery of private keys from devices like Taiwanese citizen cards and even some popular hardware security keys.
Not good.
And just recently, in 2022, OpenSSL, a very widely used cryptographic library, faced CVE 2022-0778. This was a denial of service vulnerability. Malformed explicit curve parameters if sent during a TLS handshake.
More bad input.
More bad input could cause OpenSSL to enter an infinite loop while trips to process these parameters, consuming all CPU resources and effectively crashing the server or application. And even older attacks like the Drown attack in 2016, while primarily targeting the ancient SSLv2 protocol, demonstrated how weaknesses could be chained together. Drown showed that if a server supported both modern TLS, using ECC, and weak old SSLv2 export ciphers using the same RSA key, attackers could leverage the weakness in SSLv2 to eventually decrypt modern TLS sessions. It highlighted the complex interplay and risks of supporting legacy crypto alongside modern systems.
So what does this all mean for us as users and for developers and organizations who rely on ECC? It sounds like even the strongest mathematical fortresses are only as good as their weakest link in the implementation code.
Exactly. That's the core takeaway. These incidents collectively underscore a profound truth in practical cryptography. Even with mathematically robust algorithms like ECC, their real-world security is highly conditional. It's not just about the abstract math. It's about the entire ecosystem of implementation, parameter selection, rigorous adherence to best practices, testing, and auditing.
It's the whole package.
It really is. They emphasize the paramount importance of robust, carefully audited code, thoroughly validated inputs from any external source, and perhaps most critically, the absolute necessity of secure and unpredictable randomness in all cryptographic operations, whether it's key generation or nonce generation. Trusting the math is one thing. Trusting the implementation and its surrounding environment is an entirely different and often much harder challenge. And that's usually where the real vulnerabilities lie.
Okay, let's pivot now. We've talked about the strengths, the applications, the implementation pitfalls of ECC in the world of classical computing. But now let's talk about the biggest, most existential challenge that ECC and indeed much of our current public key cryptography faces: the quantum threat.
Right. This is the big one looming on the horizon.
This isn't an implementation flaw or a historical oversight. This is something that could fundamentally break the very foundations of digital security as we know it. It could render current encryption completely obsolete.
That's not an exaggeration. What's truly critical here is that while we've relied on the computational difficulty of problems like the ECDLP and RSA's factorization for decades, the advent of sufficiently powerful quantum computers introduces an entirely new and, yes, existential threat.
Because quantum computers think differently.
They operate on fundamentally different principles: superposition, entanglement, allowing them to tackle certain types of mathematical problems much, much faster than classical computers. And this is primarily due to Shor's algorithm.
Shor's algorithm, developed by Peter Shor back in 1994, right?
That's the one. Developed by Peter Shor at Bell Labs. This groundbreaking quantum algorithm can efficiently solve both the discrete logarithm problem, which underlies ECC and traditional Diffie-Hellman, and the integer factorization problem, which underpins RSA.
Efficiently meaning fast.
Efficiently meaning in polynomial time. This is a stark contrast to the exponential or sub-exponential time required by the best classical algorithms for these problems.
Okay, polynomial time versus exponential time, that sounds like a huge difference.
It's the difference between practically impossible and potentially feasible.
So a quantum computer running Shor's algorithm could essentially undo that trapdoor function that all our asymmetric encryption relies on almost effortlessly. Crack the keys.
Precisely, assuming a large enough stable quantum computer. For ECC, a sufficiently large and stable machine, and estimates vary, but often cited numbers are somewhere between, say, 1,000 to 10,000 logical qubits.
Logical qubits, not just physical ones.
Right. Logical qubits are error-corrected qubits, which are much harder to build and require many more physical qubits. But a machine with that many logical qubits could efficiently compute the private key D just from knowing the public key Q and the public base point G.
How does Shor's do that?
Without diving impossibly deep, Shor's algorithm cleverly uses quantum properties like the quantum Fourier transform to find the period of a specific function related to the public key. Finding this period allows it to efficiently deduce the private key. It effectively reduces the complexity of the ECDLP from that hard exponential problem we talked about.
The obscure classical complexity.
Right, down to a polynomial time problem on a quantum computer, something like O log 3, where n is related to the key size. This is an enormous fundamental difference in computational effort. It makes the hard problem easy, relatively speaking, for a quantum machine.
So if a quantum computer can break both RSA and ECC, is one more vulnerable or easier to break than the other with Shor's?
That's an important and frankly quite concerning distinction. While Shor's algorithm does break both RSA and ECC, Current analyses suggest that breaking a standard 256-bit ECC key might actually require fewer qubits and potentially less time than breaking an equivalent security, say 2048-bit or 3072-bit RSA key.
Really? So ECC might fall first.
It's possible. For instance, a commonly cited estimate is that a 256-bit ECC key could perhaps be broken with around 2,330 logical qubits. Breaking a 2048-bit RSA key might require closer to 4,000 logical qubits.
Why the difference?
It relates to the underlying mathematical structures and how Shor's algorithm applies to them. It seems the structure ECDLP might lend itself slightly more easily to the algorithm's mechanics. This implies that ECC, despite its current efficiency advantages in the classical world, might actually be more susceptible to quantum attacks, or at least breakable with somewhat smaller quantum machines. This really underscores the urgency of preparing for the post-quantum era.
And what's the timeline we're looking at for this quantum reckoning? Is this a theoretical threat for our grandkids or something we need to prepare for now?
The consensus is shifting rapidly towards prepare for now. While building large-scale, fault-tolerant quantum computers is incredibly challenging.
We're not there yet.
We're not there yet with machines capable of breaking strong crypto. But progress is accelerating. Many experts predict that cryptographically relevant quantum computers machines capable of breaking current public key cryptography like RSA 2048 or ECC 256 could emerge sometime between 2030 and 2040. Some even suggest it could be sooner.
10 to 15 years, maybe less. That's not far off.
It's really not. But there's an even more immediate and very grave concern known as harvest now, decrypt later.
Harvest now, decrypt later. What does that mean?
This posits that sophisticated adversaries think nation-states with significant resources could already be capturing and storing vast amounts of today's encrypted data.
Just sucking up encrypted internet traffic.
Exactly. Encrypted emails, VPN traffic, sensitive government or corporate communications, financial data, anything that's encrypted today using algorithms vulnerable to Shor's. They're accumulating these massive archives of encrypted data.
Why? They can't read it yet.
Knowing or betting that once powerful quantum computers become available, they will be able to go back and retroactively decrypt all of it.
Oh, wow. So data encrypted today could be exposed tomorrow.
Precisely. This makes the transition to quantum-resistant solutions an incredibly urgent matter, not just for securing future data, but for protecting the long-term confidentiality of today's sensitive data. Anything that needs to remain secret for more than, say, 10, 15 years is potentially at risk right now from this harvest and decrypt strategy.
That's a chilling thought. What about symmetric encryption, like AES? Is that broken too?
That's a good question. Symmetric encryption like AES is considered much less vulnerable to quantum computers. There's another quantum algorithm, Grover's algorithm, which can speed up the search for a symmetric key.
How much faster?
It effectively halves the key strength. So AES 128, which has 128 bits of security classically, only offers about 64 bits of security against Grover's algorithm on a quantum computer.
Is 64 bits enough?
No, 64 bits is generally considered breakable. But the solution is relatively simple. Just double the key length. Migrating from AES 128 to AES 256 provides 128 bits of security even against Grover's algorithm, which is still considered very strong. So the impact on symmetric crypto is manageable.
Okay. But asymmetric crypto, like ECC and RSA.
Their asymmetric nature, relying on those trapdoor functions based on number theory problems, makes them far more fundamentally vulnerable to Shor's direct attacks. Doubling the key length doesn't really help enough against Shor's polynomial time capability.
So are we doomed? Is all our public key infrastructure just waiting to crumble? Or is there a solution to this impending quantum threat? Is there a new kind of cryptography?
Absolutely not doomed. This is where the cryptographic community has been incredibly proactive. The answer lies in post-quantum cryptography.
QQC.
Right. This is an entirely new class of cryptographic algorithms. They're specifically designed to be resistant to attacks from both powerful classical computers and future quantum computers running algorithms like Shor's and Grover's.
How do they achieve that? Different math.
Fundamentally different math. The global benchmark for this massive coordinated effort has been NIST's PQC Standardization Initiative. They ran a multi-year competition, soliciting algorithms from researchers worldwide, subjecting them to intense public scrutiny and analysis. And they recently finalized their first set of standards in 2024.
So we have official PQC standards now.
We do. These new algorithms are based on fundamentally different mathematical hard problems that are believed to be intractable even for a quantum computer. problems that Shor's algorithm doesn't apply to.
What are some of these new hard problems that PQC algorithms are built upon? It must be completely different from factoring or discrete logs on curves.
Precisely. The leading candidates selected by NIST fall into several new mathematical categories. Lattice-based cryptography is currently one of the most prominent and promising.
Lattices, like grids.
Sort of. Think of highly complex grids of points in many, many dimensions. The security of lattice-based crypto relies on the mathematical difficulty of solving problems, like finding the shortest non-zero vector in such a high-dimensional lattice, or finding the lattice point closest to a given target point. These problems are not known to be efficiently solvable by either classical or quantum computers.
Okay. And NIST chose algorithms based on lattices.
Yes, the first standards are dominated by lattice-based schemes. NIST has selected Crystal's Kyber for key encapsulation mechanisms, KEMs.
Chems, what are those?
A KEM is used for establishing shared secrets, essentially replacing key exchange protocols like ECDH. So Kyber is the quantum-resistant way to agree on a session key.
Got it. And for signatures?
For digital signatures, NIST selected Crystal's dilithium. This will serve as a quantum-resistant alternative to algorithms like ECDSA or RSA signatures. Both Kyber and dilithium fall under the Crystal suite of lattice-based algorithms.
Okay, so lattices are key. Are there other types?
Yes. Another category standardized by NIST is hash-based signatures. The standard is called SAHDSA, which is based on the SFIN's NCS Plus submission.
Hash-based, like SHA 256.
Exactly. These rely purely on the collision resistance and pre-image resistance of standard cryptographic hash functions. Since quantum computers don't offer a significant speedup for breaking hash functions, Grover's offers only a square root speedup, these signatures are inherently secure against quantum attacks.
What's the catch?
The main trade-offs are that hash-based signatures can sometimes have larger signature sizes compared to lattice schemes, and often they are stateful, meaning the signer needs to keep track of which keys have been used, or they have a strictly limited number of signatures that can be generated per private key. FINC's S+, SLHDSA, is stateless, which is a big advantage, but it comes with larger signatures and slower performance compared to dilithium.
Interesting. Any other approaches?
There are other categories that were considered and are still being researched. Code-based cryptography, like the classic Micheli's crypto system from the 1970s, uses the difficulty of decoding random-looking error-correcting codes. It's generally considered quantum-resistant, but tends to have very large public keys, which has hampered its adoption.
Okay.
Multivariate polynomial cryptography uses systems of equations over finite fields. Some candidates in this area were broken during the NIST process, but research continues. And there was also isogeny-based cryptography, which actually uses maps between different elliptic curves. Schemes like SysID and Psych looked promising initially.
Using elliptic curves to fight quantum computers, that sounds ironic.
It does. They seemed elegant and had small keys. But unfortunately, SID and Psych were dramatically broken by new classical attacks in 2022, highlighting how new vulnerabilities can emerge even in algorithms designed for quantum resistance. Other isogeny approaches like CSIDH are still being explored, but the field took a hit.
So it's mainly lattices and hash-based for now.
For the initial NIST standards, yes. Let's quickly summarize those first key standards. Algorithm function mathematical foundation, NIST standard name.
Kyber key encapsulation, lattice-based, Crystal Suite, MLChem. Dilithium, digital signatures, lattice-based, Crystal Suite, MLDSA. Sphinx plus digital signatures, hash-based, SLHDSA.
Okay, MLDSA, SLHDSA. Got it. So we have these new algorithms, these new standards, but how do we actually transition the entire global digital infrastructure, everything from web servers to phones to IoT devices to this new quantum-resistant world? That sounds like a colossal undertaking, far more complex than just pushing out a software update.
It is indeed a monumental task, arguably one of the biggest cryptographic transitions humanity has ever faced. Migrating the world's cryptographic infrastructure is orders of magnitude more complex than, say, the transition from the SHA-1 hash function to SHA-2, which itself took well over a decade and still isn't perfectly complete.
So how do we manage it? We can't just flip a switch.
No, definitely not. For this reason, a hybrid approach is widely considered the optimal practical transition strategy, at least for the near term.
Hybrid, meaning using both old and new.
Exactly. This involves combining existing, well-understood classical algorithms like, say, X5-519 and ECC curve for key exchange with one of the new PQC algorithms like Kyber within a single system or protocol.
How does that work? You do both.
Essentially, yes. For key exchange, you might perform both an ECDH exchange and a Kyber-Chem exchange, and then combine the resulting secrets in some way to derive the final session key. For signatures, you might require both an ECDSA signature and a dilithium signature to be valid.
What's the advantage of doing both? Seems like more work.
The huge advantage is security resilience. This dual-layer approach provides immediate protection against any potential future quantum breakthrough, because the PQC part is resistant, while simultaneously relying on the proven security of ECC against classical attacks today. It also maintains backward compatibility and interoperability with legacy systems that might not yet support PQC. It's a crucial layer of defense in depth during this uncertain transition period. Even if one algorithm is eventually broken, classically or quantumly, the other still provides security.
That makes a lot of sense, a safety net.
A crucial safety net. We also have quantum key distribution, QKD, which uses actual quantum mechanics principles like photon polarization for key exchange.
Sending keys using quantum physics.
Right. It offers theoretically unconditional security based on the laws of physics. If someone tries to eavesdrop, the quantum state is disturbed and it's detected. However, QKD has significant practical limitations. It requires specialized, dedicated hardware, often fiber optic links, is currently limited in range due to signal loss, is very expensive, and crucially, it only solves the key exchange problem. It doesn't help with digital signatures or authenticating parties, nor does it protect against the harvest now decrypt later threat for data already captured.
So QKD isn't a general replacement for PQC.
No, it's more of a niche solution for specific high-security point-to-point links, perhaps complementing PQC rather than replacing it broadly.
Okay, so hybrid PQC is the main path forward. What are the timelines and challenges?
The timeline is pressing, as we discussed. NIST is strongly recommending that organizations inventory their crypto and begin developing migration plans now, aiming to transition critical systems perhaps by the early 2030s. There are definitely challenges. PQC algorithms often have larger keys and signatures compared to the highly optimized ECC we're used to. For example, Kyber Deno 24's public keys are over 1.5 kilobytes, compared to maybe 64 bytes for an ECC public key. Signatures can also be larger.
That impacts bandwidth, storage?
Absolutely. Performance can also be a factor. Some PQC operations might be slower than their ECC counterparts, although lattice crypto is proving surprisingly fast in many cases. These factors impact bandwidth, storage requirements, processing time, especially for small, resource-constrained devices in the IoT world. There's a lot of engineering work needed to integrate these new algorithms efficiently.
So what's the key strategy then?
The key strategic goal for everyone should be crypto agility.
Crypto agility, meaning being flexible.
Exactly. Designing systems and infrastructure with the ability to easily and quickly switch to new cryptographic algorithms as standards evolve, as new threats emerge, or perhaps as even newer, more efficient PQC algorithms are developed in the future. It's about building flexibility and modularity into our digital security infrastructure from the ground up. We need to recognize that security is a continuous process of adaptation, not a one-time fix where we deploy ECC and assume it lasts forever.
And are companies actually starting this transition?
Yes, definitely. Major players are already taking steps. Google, for instance, has been experimenting with hybrid ECC-PQC key exchange, specifically CEC-PQ2, combining X25519 and HRS Kyber in Chrome for years to test real-world performance. Cloud providers like AWS and others are also offering PQC options or testing them internally. The migration has begun, albeit slowly, but the wheels are definitely in motion.
Okay, we've covered a huge amount of ground, from the elegant math of curves to implementation pitfalls and the looming quantum horizon. So what does this all mean for the legacy of ECC and the future of our digital security? It really sounds like we're at a pivotal moment in cryptography.
We absolutely are. What's clear from our deep dive today is that ECC has undeniably been a vital, incredibly efficient, and highly secure asymmetric cryptographic system. It truly formed the backbone of modern digital security for, well, the last couple of decades.
It had a good run.
A great run. Its strength lies in the computational hardness of the elliptic curve discrete logarithm problem, which provided a security level that scaled far more favorably than older systems like RSA. That efficiency made it perfect for the mobile and IoT age. And as we saw, it became truly ubiquitous, securing everything from cryptocurrencies to web traffic in that rapidly expanding world of connected devices.
Oh.
But our discussion has also illuminated a crucial nuance, a critical caveat. Its practical security is highly dependent not just on the robustness of the underlying math, but on flawless implementation.
The human factor again.
Always. Poor randomness in key or nonce generation, failures in validating inputs, vulnerability to side-channel attacks. These subtle implementation flaws have led to real-world, sometimes catastrophic, security incidents. It proves that even the best algorithms are only as strong as their weakest link in the code or the system using them.
And the final nail in the coffin, long term.
And finally, yes, the long-term security of ECC, like RSA, is ultimately finite. It's demonstrably vulnerable to attacks by sufficiently powerful quantum computers running Shor's algorithm.
So given that ECC is still very widely used today, and the transition to PQC will take years, what should organizations or even individuals who manage their own systems do right now to stay safe and secure with their current ECC deployments?
That's a crucial question for the immediate future. For secure ECC deployment right now, there are critical best practices that organizations must adhere to rigorously. First, use only vetted standard curves.
No homebrew curves.
Absolutely not. Stick to publicly verifiable curves that have undergone extensive scrutiny by the cryptographic community. Avoid anything based on unexplained magic numbers or designs that lack transparency. Trustworthy choices include NIST's P-curves, like P256, P384, P521, or modern curves like Curve 25519 add 25519, which were specifically designed for both robust security and ease of safe implementation.
Okay, good curves.
Second, always strive to use constant time implementations for all operations involving secret keys, especially scalar point multiplication. Use methods like the Montgomery ladder or other constant time techniques. This is absolutely crucial to prevent those insidious side-channel attacks we discussed, where attackers might infer private key bits from timing or power variations.
Easier said than done sometimes, but crucial.
Very crucial. Third, and this cannot be stressed enough, prioritize true randomness. Never, ever reuse nonces in digital signature schemes like ECDSA. All key generation, and especially nonce generation, must utilize a truly cryptographically secure random number generator, CSPRNG, one that's well-tested, properly seeded, and regularly audited for unpredictability.
Or use deterministic nonces.
Or even better in many cases, employ deterministic nonce generation methods like RFC 6979. This derives the nonce from the private key and the message hash, completely eliminating the risk of nonce reuse due to a faulty RNG during the signing process itself.
Makes sense. Anything else for current safety?
Finally, ensure strict validation of all inputs. Implement robust checks for all received elliptic curve parameters and points, especially when they come from external or untrusted sources. Verify they belong to the correct curve, have the right order, etc., to prevent invalid curve attacks and other forms of manipulation that can compromise the system by forcing operations on a weak or incorrect curve. Input validation is key.
Okay, those are great practical steps for today. But the quantum threat is, as you said, not a matter of if, but when. So looking ahead, what's the strategic imperative for quantum readiness and migration? How can organizations realistically prepare for this future?
This really requires foresight and strategic planning from every organization, starting now. They need to adopt a proactive, systematic approach to quantum readiness. The first step has to be conduct a comprehensive inventory of all cryptographic assets.
Figure out where all the crypto is hiding.
Exactly. You need to identify every single instance of ECC, RSA, and any other vulnerable cryptographic algorithms across all your systems, internal applications, databases, APIs, communications protocols, third-party services you rely on, embedded devices, firmware, even long-term data archives. You need to understand what data is protected, for how long it needs to remain secret, and which systems are the most critical or exposed.
That sounds like a massive job in itself for big companies.
It is, but it's essential. You can't plan a migration if you don't know what you need to migrate. Second, begin to develop a strategy and roadmap for adopting a hybrid approach.
The ECC plus PQC combination.
Right. Start planning for a gradual transition to PQC standards by designing and eventually deploying hybrid cryptographic protocols. Combine your existing, proven ECC security with the quantum resistance of the new NIST PQC standards, like Kyber and dilithium. This provides that robust, future-proof solution without sacrificing backward compatibility immediately or disrupting current operations drastically. This phased approach allows organizations to gain experience with PQC in lower-risk environments first, while maintaining a safety net.
Start experimenting, basically.
Yeah, start experimenting, start piloting, start building the capability. And finally, perhaps most importantly, stay informed and engaged. The field of quantum computing and post-quantum cryptography is evolving incredibly rapidly. Continuously monitor developments from NIST, from academic research, from the broader cryptographic community, and from leading industry bodies. keep track of new standards, evolving best practices, performance improvements, and advancements in both quantum computing threats and PQC solutions. This isn't a one-time upgrade project. It requires a continuous strategic posture of awareness and adaptation. Build that crypto agility we talked about.
This deep dive truly shows us that security isn't static. It's a dynamic, almost relentless race between mathematical ingenuity on one side and computational power, both classical and quantum, on the other. The elliptic curve has served us incredibly well for decades, acting as a robust digital fortress in an increasingly connected world.
It really has been a workhorse.
But the impending quantum era demands that we reimagine the very foundations of digital trust. It's an exciting, if slightly daunting, time to be thinking about cryptography and the future of security.
Absolutely. And the strategic decision to embrace crypto agility, to begin that thoughtful, planned transition to a quantum-resilient infrastructure, is not just another technical upgrade. It's truly a critical step in safeguarding the long-term integrity and confidentiality of all our digital assets, personal, corporate, national, in the face of an unprecedented technological shift. The question really becomes, what will you or your organization do to prepare for the quantum shift and secure your digital future?
A profound question to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of elliptic curve cryptography. We hope you're leaving a little more informed, maybe a little less intimidated by the math, and definitely a lot more curious about the hidden algorithms protecting your digital world.
It's been a pleasure. Until next time.